on Australia's business channel. This is Mediaweek.
Hello, welcome to the program. Ahead, Foxtel unveils its programming lineup and puts Foxtel Go on the iPhone and iPod. We're going to be hearing from the CEO, Richard Freudenstein. Everything you need to know about the print circulation and readership data, and of course the outlook from the media CEOs that have been reporting results this week. But first, to the upheaval at APN. The company is still without a CEO after Brett Chenoweth and 4 other directors, including the chairman, resigned this week after the major shareholders opposed a capital raising to reduce debt. So there was no news conference as the company unveiled a near $500 million annual loss on write-downs to its publishing assets. For more, let's go to our co-host James Manning, the editor and publisher of Mediaweek. James, a week of drama at APN. Where next for the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, as you mentioned, no CEO. We're waiting for a replacement for Brett Chenoweth. Could be Vincent Crowley, seems to be the most likely candidate. He actually was the CEO about a decade ago, from 2000 to 2002. He's been in other parts of the company around the world since then, so sort of well qualified. Previous Fairfax chief executive too, Brian McCarthy's also been mentioned. He's been advising the print side of the business, so he could be a candidate as well.
And just looking at the results today, they were talking about print still struggling in the statement, the results. But there was a glimmer of hope in the radio and the outdoor.
Sure, yeah, print's struggling. Look, it's very dependent on the economies of Queensland and New Zealand. They both let the business down there. Radio, Australian Radio Network, yeah, it did very well. It was the only actual part of the company to increase its revenue, about up 5%. Outdoor, it's all JVs now. They're outdoor. Adshell, a JV with Clear Channel, that did very well, up about 17%. And APN Outdoor now is a JV with Quadrant. That was pretty much flat, their revenues.
All right. Well, APN, of course, was just one of a number of media companies reporting results this week. Here's a look at some of the other profit numbers.
Fairfax Media's first half net profit quadrupled to nearly $390 million on one-time gains from asset sales, including its stake in TradeMe. It says weak advertising conditions persist.
The only thing that's occurred in the meantime is the fact that there's been a strong lift in the equity market. And if this was a wealth-based downturn in consumer sentiment based around fear of loss of wealth, both in terms of lower property prices and stressed superannuation accounts, a sustained run in the equity markets will help that sentiment. And that, traditionally, in our business, flows through into the property market, which is 30% of our advertising.
The cost-cutting program announced last year is already ahead of schedule, and the company is looking for additional cost savings. Seven West Media swung to a first-half loss of $109 million after write-downs on the value of its magazines and its stake in Yahoo 7. Revenue fell to $986 million as gains in TV failed to offset losses in the print divisions. Seven says advertising remains weak. It's expecting flat to single-digit growth in TV, while falls in magazines and newspaper advertising will continue.
We think television is on that verge of to the next thing that adds another couple percent. And we want to be there, and we want to be very smart about that. On the publishing businesses, I think it's being smart that we don't lose circulation, that we keep our circulation up, but trim the cost where we can to make an efficient product so that we at least keep our margins high to go through the transition that we're going through.
Don Volte, who describes himself as the transition CEO, didn't say when his tenure might end, but that succession planning is ongoing.
We really believe that the future CEO comes from our management ranks, and
so I'm sitting up there on the platform today with you.
Well, you never know, but I would just say that's the board's decision. I probably won't be involved in that decision, but the chairman and the board will make that decision.
Regional radio and TV broadcaster Southern Cross Media saw profit fall 52% to $45 million. That was mostly due to a tax benefit in the prior corresponding period, but it said that the past 12 months had been one of the most difficult in its history. The impact of the Today FM royal prank call tragedy that led to an advertiser boycott was $3.6 million in costs and lost revenue. And poor ratings performance and the loss of the AFL hit TV revenues.
We think that the way we're seeing the market at the moment, sentiment seems to be better, so I think generally people are feeling a little better about the world. but it's certainly choppy from month to month, and certainly our ad book is still short term. So, gosh, it's hard. How do you characterise that? We're very cautious about our outlook period. We've given some guidance where we think net profit will be at the end of the year, but we think that we need to see a holding at least, or a slight improvement in our ratings position, particularly through television.
2GB owner Macquarie Radio, which had its own advertiser boycott following Alan Jones's comments about the Prime Minister's father, says underlying performance was reasonable given that incident and the decline in radio market spend levels. The decision to ditch its troubled MTR talkback radio station led to a doubling of net profit to $4.5 million.
Let's get a check on how the markets reacted to all those reports, and we're joined by Evan Lucas, market strategist at IG. Evan, just firstly, obviously big moves in the APN share price in the wrong direction initially.
Yeah, look, APN is obviously trading on a very, very slim volumes today, even though it's obviously showing that it's up about 3.7%. That's obviously the fact that it has only changed a cent. Look, the start of the week was an absolute disaster for the stock. There's no doubt about it. The destabilisation from the board change is really going to sort of have a fairly major effect on APN. Look, as we sort of heard in the first start, a lot of investors will be looking at two things: whether or not the radio network can continue to sort of power on as it has and actually obviously propped up this result, or with the fact that there is still very, very challenging advertising networks still coming through, how bad that affects obviously that Queensland and New Zealand markets, particularly as things like billboards and print media tend to really drag on the stock.
Just wanted to ask you about some of the other media stocks as well. Of course, we've had Fairfax out, Seven West Media there. What's been the market reaction to those, the analyst reaction too? Because I have seen some broker upgrades.
Yeah, look, Fairfax is probably one I'd probably start at. It did, when it came out, it was a very big headline figure with the fact that it quadrupled like net profit, and it obviously came out at about $368 million. But obviously you've got to strip out the fact that they did sell Trade Me in that. Look, headwinds still remain there. There's no doubt about it that the board, with obviously Greg Hayward and the rest, have a real sort of challenging time still coming ahead. There is still a lot of weakness, particularly in that real estate and the national advertising market. It is going to continue to sort of drag on the stock. They also said, and what's really disappointing, is that the first 6 weeks of the year, it's 9 to 10% lower than what they had on the corresponding period. It does tend to suggest that Fairfax is still under a fair amount of strain. It's probably why you've seen it off for this morning on its result. It's down about 1.8%, 1.2%. Obviously, we've seen the market as itself drag off quite hard, but I do understand why the market's set back there. Moving to Seven West Media. Seven West Media is a bit of an interesting one at the moment. It's got a sort of a tale of two cities, really. Their Seven business does actually look quite reasonable. They've got 40% of EBIT coming from there. Channel 7 continues to be the absolute top rater on TV. The issue is the advertising space. It still remains tight. I believe the X factor for Seven West is probably going to be the election. The amount of spending coming on that towards the second half of the year will be very, very interesting. There is obviously that huge amount of exposure that they will have through that 7 period. However, on the other side, the newspaper side and the print side does look like it's still going through a very big structural change. We're still trying to see if it can hand over from the paper to the digital world, and that's still going to be questions that need to be asked towards the end of the year.
All right, Evan, thank you so much for that wrap. Well, this week, Foxtel has revealed its 2013 programming lineup, and that Foxtel Go will now be available on the iPhone and iPod Touch, as well as the addition of Fox Sports 1, 2 and 3. Well, Mediaweek editor and publisher James Manning was there, of course, for the launch, and a very glamorous evening, lots of stars, including Chris Hemsworth.
Yeah, it was, absolutely. Yeah, Chris Hemsworth, Sam Worthington was there too. It was a bit of sort of Hollywood glamour, if you like. Jennifer Hawkins was unveiled for her first year of hosting Australia's Next Top Model. Actually started filming this week, those episodes, and they brought out, I think, the 25 contestants, so they showed them all off, so yeah, it was good.
Just coming to that announcement of Foxtel Go, now going to be on the iPhone, the iPod Touch, and also the Fox Sports channels will be available?
Yeah, Fox Sports 1, 2 and 3 all available now. We think the AFL will be announcement very soon before the season proper starts about that. Something like 380,000 downloads so far, so a lot of people have been sampling the product, so it's doing very well for them. Android, still not out, but only weeks away, we believe.
All right, and a host of executive changes as well being announced too at Foxtel also this week?
Sure, yeah. Brendan Moo been in TV a long time, was at Channel 9 for a long time, been in Foxtel management, taking over Arena, Fox 8, some of the big brands for them. Other people moving around too. Graham Burrell's looking after he used to look after Olympics, creative director for Olympics, looking after the movie channels and drama.
All right, and of course you spoke to the CEO, Richard Freudenstein, as well at the programming lineup launch there for Foxtel, promising a huge year. Here's that interview.